Hey guys, I had really no intention of doing a video today. I am quite tired actually, but I just watched Dan Patrick's press conference about the THC ban in Texas, and I just cannot stay quiet. So let's get into it.
And they want to hook our generation of young people today for a lifetime of drugs, and you need to sell that story. This is what it's all about. And it's not just kids buying this. Adults buy it, give it to kids. Adults buy it for themselves. We had horrendous testimony of one 22-year-old who bought this. I don't know what product it was. I think she said wedding cake. He stepped in front of a train and got run over, killed. This is serious business. This is not Dan's folly. This is not Dan's priority. This is to save an entire generation of being hooked on drugs. And I need for you all to take this story seriously.
Okay, so first of all, this 22-year-old that he speaks of, his name is Joshua. Now, Joshua has kind of become the face of cannabis-induced psychosis. Notice this billboard says that synthetic THC killed Joshua. There is a huge difference between banning all THC and just banning the synthetic cannabinoids. I worked with a Texas farmer out of Dripping Springs named Aaron Owens. He has a wonderful product called Tejas Tonic, and he helped me write a story about synthetic cannabinoids, and I will link it in the description if you want to know more. It's a really good explainer. I personally think that banning synthetic products is a great compromise. Don't come for me if you're in the industry and you feel different. That is my opinion. And at the end of the day, synthetics are not stimulating agriculture, which is why the Farm Bill was signed. And I really want to support farmers. And I think using natural products from farmers that are in this country is the right thing to do. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner of this billboard, you will see that the Safer Texas Alliance funded this billboard. And if you do a little digging online, you see that the Safer Texas Alliance is actually funded by the wholesale beer distributors of Texas. So this is really about profits. THC is digging into alcohol profits. Gen Z, for example, is drinking less than any other generation before, and it's probably because they have other options. Now, you should also know that Dan Patrick is bought by the alcohol industry. In fact, Dan Patrick received $350,000 from the alcohol industry in 2024. The Rogue DNC Instagram reported that Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has gone on an aggressive campaign to ban all THC products in Texas. He said that he's very concerned for the children. He is very concerned that this could impact the health of adults, but why is he not concerned about adults drinking a whole case of beer or an entire bottle of whiskey? Well, he's bought by the alcohol industry. One of the biggest donors to his campaign is Silver Eagle Beverages, a distributor for Anheuser-Busch, who donated $250,000 and then donated another $100,000, bringing the total to $350,000, according to OpenSecrets.org. Let's get into this story about Joshua. It's really unfortunate. He did commit suicide. He jumped in front of a train, but I can't say that I'm convinced that cannabis had anything to do with it. His death, unfortunately, happened in a town called Pecos, Texas, I believe, according to the article that I read. It's a town so small that their local paper doesn't have an online version of their publication. So Susan Hayes, who was a Democratic candidate for the Texas Ag Commissioner, she lost to Sid Miller last time around. You can learn about how corrupt Sid Miller is in my last video, and I'll link that above for you. But on her Instagram, she posted an article where she was actually able to get a version of the story that ran in their newspaper that quoted Joshua's mother. And I'm going to share it with you because, unfortunately, this being such a small paper and being only a print publication, it's not out there. It's not being spread around because it was never published on the internet. So Susan Hayes asked for the copy of this article and she posted it on her Instagram. Now, let's see what it says. Joshua Jimenez, 22, who was traveling via bus from Los Angeles to Houston on Thursday, was killed when he was struck by a train at 6 p.m. near the intersection of US 285 and the Union Pacific Railroad tracks. Jimenez's mother, Sonia, contacted the Enterprise on Monday to relate the crisis she said her son was going through and to advocate for changes to emergency policy that she said could have possibly saved her son. She said his death casts a spotlight on the mental health issues many face around the holidays. Joshua has a history of dealing with cannabis-induced psychosis. He liked to do concentrated THC, and when he was high on it, he would have mental issues. 3 times in 3 years, he had a psychotic break and had to be hospitalized. He was often misdiagnosed with schizophrenia, but it only happened on the concentrates, Sonia Jimenez said, which is his mother. Always during these episodes, she continued, he would be hallucinating, seeing things that are not there, and hearing voices, but once the police and EMTs show up, he would put on a straight face. How does that work? There are, conservative commentators out there like Allie Beth Stuckey who spread propaganda that, oh, it's clickbait, let's put on our video, weed is causing schizophrenia. And it's because of stories like this where it just feels like there's a lot of information missing, and you have to wonder, what other substances maybe was this kid on? I have a theory that these cannabis-induced schizophrenia situations are people who already have schizophrenia and they're self-medicating because the cannabis makes them feel better. And I actually found proof of this in Rick Simpson's book called Phoenix Tears. Rick Simpson created cannabis oil called Rick Simpson oil, and it was used to cure a lot of people's cancer. And people would ask him to make the oil because they had schizophrenia, and it helped their symptoms better than the pharmaceuticals did without turning them into a zombie. He talks about a child that he knew that he dated his mother, but after him and the mother broke up, the son still came around because he was friends with Rick Simpson's son. Now, as a young adult, he started showing symptoms of schizophrenia, and one day he was talking kind of out of his mind, and he lit up a joint, and halfway through the joint, he started talking completely normal. And Rick Simpson said that he just wished that this kid would have been able to try the oil because he had seen it help others with the same condition, but unfortunately, he passed away at a young age before Rick Simpson developed this oil. And this book was published in 2012, so it just makes you wonder, is there another chain of events going on here? I actually wrote about this in the June issue of Blazed magazine. Pick it up if you're in an area where we are, which is all over Central Texas, Houston. Go to blazenews.com and you can learn more about us. But anyways, I'm already at 7 minutes, and I didn't want this to get too long, but it's really just stuff that needs to be explained. So let's continue with this article. So he would put on a straight face for the police, Joshua would, during his psychotic episodes. His mom went on to say, he was doing fine in rehab, but after he got home, I found the drugs in his room, and I threw the vape pen he was using away. He packed his bag the next day and left to go to Los Angeles. I asked him the day he left my house to keep my name and number in his pocket just in case something happened to him. It was later that my daughter would find the suicidal posts he made to social media, she said. He was a great kid. He worked as a server in a high-end restaurant here in Houston and was able to keep it together and make his own money. So he bought his ticket to LA, and when he arrived, he called to say it was God who had sent him out there to save everybody. So on Wednesday, December 23rd, I guess he called his mom. He said he felt tired and was going to take a nap on Thursday morning. His mom called his phone and it went straight to voicemail. I called my daughter and she said his location data had stopped updating on Wednesday evening. After 2 more calls to his phone, he finally picked up his phone and said he had got off the bus in Amarillo. My daughter said that when she had last spoken with him, he said he wanted to kill himself. It was in the process of setting up arrangements to have him hospitalized as soon as he arrived back in Houston when he called to check in, and I asked him to turn back on his phone's location services. It showed he was in Pecos. It said that he was in Pecos and not Amarillo. Soon after, I got another call from Josh saying that he was looking for some necklaces he lost on the train tracks. That was around 11 a.m. on Thursday. He was using a phone he had borrowed from a stranger because he had broken his phone on the tracks. The person who loaned him the phone said he was a pediatrician at the refugee camp there in town. I asked to speak to the doctor and he said he would let me talk to him. After his evaluation, he said he believed that Joshua was indeed suicidal and would be contacting an ambulance, as Josh told him explicitly that he did want to step in front of a train. I immediately called the Pecos police and they connected me to the officer at the scene. And like I said before, Josh would put on a straight face every time the police would arrive. I told the officer about his social media posts and his medical history. The officer put the paramedic on the phone and I explained about his cannabis-induced psychosis history. I could feel in my heart that this was likely the last time I would talk to Josh. The EMT told me because Josh knew his name, where he was, and the date, etc., they could not hold him as it would technically be kidnapping at that point. The officer said he would try to get Josh on a bus as soon as possible, but said the next bus leaving at 6 p.m. was already full. He offered to get Josh a motel room and pick him up the next morning to take him to the bus stop. I texted the doctor and informed him of the situation. He was very upset, but I understand the police and EMTs were just following protocol. Now he did have a bus ticket for the morning, but he is without a phone and so no music or anything to distract him while he waited. 2 hours go by and I have no word from Josh. It is now 6 p.m. I could feel he was gone. When I called into the police department, I was told repeatedly that an officer would call me back. When they finally did, he confirmed what I feared. It's really sad. It is really sad that this happened, okay? I don't, her heartbreak, the mother's heartbreak is valid, but do we eliminate 50,000 jobs, kill an $8 billion industry, and take away the medicine of our veterans and elderly people and the sick because of a story like this that I am not convinced that THC is to blame? I don't think that it's been proven. Is there a toxicology report? The other thing is, like, some drugs go out of your system faster than others because your body has an endocannabinoid system and your endocannabinoid system uses those cannabinoids. So that's why it takes a long time for hemp and cannabis to come out of the system, whereas your body's trying to get rid of poisons like meth and alcohol immediately. So let's continue. So she said that she's not mad at the officers. He was just following what he's trained to do, but I would like to see changes made. At that first contact made that day, Joshua should have been taken in then. I do agree with that. I actually knew someone that it wasn't cannabis. It was actually like alcohol and pill induced psychosis. But yeah, this person, was trying to tell the cops like, oh no, like everything's fine, but you know, because of the witnesses, because her family and friends had said like, no, like, you know, she's been telling us she wants to kill herself, they did take her to the mental hospital. So I think that was the right choice, and I wish they would have done that for Joshua. I really do. So we heard about Joshua, and we heard stories similar to this at the hearings at the state capitol during this legislative session, where mothers would come, or, you know, family members would come and talk about their loved one who experienced a cannabis-induced psychosis. It was never the person. It was never the person it actually happened to, like saying how horrible it was. It's always like a mother, and it's their like adult son that, you know, and then they pass it off like, oh, these kids, yeah, it's her kid, but her kid is of legal age to make their own decisions. Those kids were old enough to drink, buy a gun, join the military, and fight in a war, smoke cigarettes. Why are we targeting hemp and cannabis? It's not the only thing that carries a risk for some people. I mean, I'm not going to say that, you know, some people don't have a bad reaction, people who are predisposed to, you know, mental illnesses already. And that's why education is so important. That's where we should be pouring our resources into, because these products are not going away. They are doing the cartel the biggest favor by passing SB3, because these products are going to go underground into a black market. And being a hemp journalist for the past few years, this industry is needed. And And the industry has come together. Let me tell you, they are still fighting. We're not going to stop fighting. We're not going to just lay down and take this. I mean, this industry is so strong, and it's honestly really an inspiration, the way that they've fought for something that they truly believe in. And I want to show you a little clip of a press conference that happened, I believe yesterday, so Monday, at the Capitol. And they wheeled in all these boxes full of signatures to veto SB3, and that's why Dan Patrick is scared, and his desperation is really coming across thick in his press conference. There's Charles Perry. He is just watching them wheel in 113,000 letters to the governor begging him to veto SB3. Like, he looks terrified.
Most part are already done. Because there's a tremendous onslaught of pressure from an $8 billion industry that has unlimited money, and they're trying to poison the story to stop this from happening. That's why, because I can tell you how effective they are, because most of you in this room, no criticism personally, most of you in this room have bought into a lot of their story. Oh, it's going to cost jobs, it's going to impact the economy, it's an $8 billion industry, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? People are going to be hooked on drugs, having to go somewhere when all this goes off the shelves. You all have been, you're part of the problem, quite frankly, because you're not telling the story. So that's why we're here. I'm worried about the pressure on the media and the general public to try to keep this going in some way and bring it back or stay alive.
Are you worried about a veto?
I'm not. I pass bills, the governor signs or vetoes them. I'm not worried about the governor.
Really? Because it kind of seems like you're worried. If you're not worried, then why are you even having this press conference? Because the bill has passed. The only thing that could happen to sabotage it at this point is the governor vetoing it. And the industry has just shown up in mass numbers, showing Texans want hemp. And I think Greg Abbott knows that his job will be at stake because there's a primary coming up. This is the perfect time for a Republican to swoop in and say, guess what? I support all of your conservative values, plus I'll give you hemp. Plus, let's legalize cannabis. You know, I will do the will of the people, which is something that Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick failed to do. So Dan Patrick, you know, he's like, I really need you guys to take this story seriously, but I'm not worried about what the governor is going to do. I know his heart. I know his heart. I'm not worried about the governor. Really? So, you know, to anyone watching this in the industry, what you're doing is totally working. Keep blowing up the phone. Keep sending the emails. Keep blowing up the social media comments, because it's obviously making an impact in a way that, I mean, you know, honestly, when SB3 passed, I was pretty depressed to be a Texan. And now seeing everybody just go that much harder is truly an inspiration. I thought, you know, man, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what any citizen does for any cause, no matter how popular, you know, in this democracy, you know, it just doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want to do. They're going to be crooked. They're going to be corrupt. They're going to put their interests over the interests of the people. And it's just the way it is, you know, but the industry has not laid down and given up. You know, so, you know, at first I think we all felt deflated, but then it was right back to work. So I salute you all for that.
100,000 Texans have signed on to the petition calling for the governor to veto SB3. We've generated thousands of emails to the governor's office. His phone has been ringing off the hook, and we are making sure that he's feeling the heat. In fact, just a couple days ago, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick hosted a press conference that was dripping with desperation. He knows he's on the wrong side of this issue. He knows that Texans do not favor prohibition, and much like he strong-armed the legislature to pass SB3, he tried to strong-arm the media, and it backfired. You can't go onto any social media platform, any news article, and not see a thread of Texans recognizing that this bill is going to be a failure. We do not want it. We reject prohibition. We support regulation. So keep up the good work, advocates. We've got work to do in these last few days, so keep up the pressure. Let's not leave anything on the table.
Has anyone thought about the influx of unemployment that's going to have to be paid in Texas when 50,000 people lose their jobs? I actually emailed the Texas Workforce Commission asking about that. as a journalist. And they wrote back and said that they can't comment on anything that's not a law yet. But I'm asking, well, how are you guys not thinking ahead? Like, since this is a possibility, like, they were very tight-lipped. I'm going to end this one here, but I wanted to leave it on a comical note. Happy Clouds really nailed it with their reel that they shared on Instagram. It's a little parody from the press conference, so I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I have lots more content planned that I'm going to blow the internet up with. Until we see a veto, I'll see you next time.
Anybody want this bag? Okay.
Thanks. Come shop at Happy Clouds.